First, I'd like to start by saying that regardless of what you hear from Malcolm or Michelle, Robert Mitchell is a solid, great guy.
Whatever you heard from Malcolm or Jeff is not true. Robert is a really good guy.
In spite of whatever Jeff and Michelle may have said, he's really quite a good guy.
I got stuck with Robert Mitchell back in about 1995. He was already a patent agent working on the work for Pratt & Whitney Canada. It was a pleasure to work with Robert throughout the years, and he really helped me get on my feet as a new IP counsel for a new intellectual property group at Pratt & Whitney Canada.
The first encounter I had with Robert was around April 1987 when I was interviewed by him as a partner of the old Swaby firm. And it was kind of an odd interview because he said, I'll show you how our files are built. The other partner had given him a pretty good take on me. So it was a very short interview based on just, hey, this are like I was gonna go there, which I gladly accepted when they offered me the job.
When and under what circumstances I first met Robert? Well, it's over 50 years ago, so it's hard to remember. In fact, I think he's been practically with me my entire life. The initial meeting was probably at IPIC.
Working with Robert Mitchell was a real treat. I got to know Bob many years ago when we were both involved in the Educational Programming Committee for IPIC. And one initiative in particular that stands out for me was the development of FORPIC. We worked together in developing a French language program for the members, and it grew from there. It eventually became a standalone program, and I believe even a standalone organization. But Bob has been a constant in the association for so many years. You could count on him being at almost every annual meeting and the life of the party.
Other than just having met him through my work at Pratt & Whitney, Robert and I, crossed paths in many ways. I mean, he obviously was deeply involved in work for the profession. I recall distinctly a meeting in the year 2000 or so when Robert and I traveled to Ottawa to meet with some government types to talk about privilege for the profession. And what made this stand out in my mind so clearly is the fact that we got to Ottawa, opened up a pack of caramelized popcorn to have a bite to eat, and promptly split one of my molars in the back of my mouth in half. This obviously was an emergency. So Robert's next door neighbor was a dentist. He called him up. He was able to take me in on an emergency basis, and that guy's still my dentist to this day. So, Robert's helped me out in many ways, both in my career and personally as well.
I think Robert Mitchell is probably one of the kind of the pillars of the IP profession in Canada. He's kind of trained almost a generation of IP professionals in the Montreal area, and his work with FORPIC and the IPPI Canada as well as IPIC has just really been someone who has really made an amazing contribution to the IP profession in Canada and to IPIC as well.
To work for Robert was a great experience. He was my mentor from day one, because to become a patent agent, you have to be trained, and it takes years. So he was the one giving me files, reviewing my drafts, slowly building me up to become a patent agent. He was a pillar in the office, but then he did all this work for associations, and his involvement in those was incredible, as others well know, specifically IPIC members know that for decades.
I think anyone who has encountered Robert Mitchell knows that he offers so much to the profession. He has volunteered for decades. I encountered him as part of the Professional Regulation Committee. He was greatly involved in developing the Code of Ethics and just acting as a mentor for those of us in the profession who came after him, and his contributions to the profession are unmatched.
I think perhaps his principal role was in the participation in the negotiation of international treaties. Yes, you'd have your meetings, but then you'd have your informal discussions afterwards. you'd have sitting around a bar somewhere chatting about things with people from other jurisdictions and basically lobbying. And Robert was always very good at that. He had a facility to make people think that they were the most important people.
The most impressive thing about Robert is he can communicate with such humor, intelligence, and wisdom, and he really has a knack for educating you and making you laugh at the same time. The thing that strikes me about Robert is he's always there, willing to contribute, willing to offer a perspective through being a member of IPIC for many years, being a leader within IPIC, and always having the energy to talk to you about issues. And he's also relevant on top of the issues of the day.
He's worked not only on behalf of IPIC, but in his personal capacity and as well with international organizations such as FICP and AIPPI to help do this work.
AIPPI, which is an international organization of people who are interested in intellectual property. Robert had the idea that the Canadian group should invite the international group to have one of their congresses, which takes place every 3 years in Canada. The Montreal one was just under construction at that time, but everyone thought it'd be a nice idea to go there. The hotels weren't there at all, but the chairlift was there. So they had the Queen Elizabeth Hotel set up tents at the top of the ski lift. And there were a lot of fireflies when we were descending at night, which was quite late. And one of the Germans wondered if we had arranged the fireflies, that was some form of electrical advance that Canada had achieved. I would say that was a very significant contribution. They went on to make Robert a member of honor there and gave him various awards, and he participated in their committees. He did the same type of work he did at IPIC, but not as intensive, obviously. His main preoccupation was to advance Canada. Well, Robert also worked on revising a text with Garth Mabey of the history of the profession up to 1976. And it's quite detailed and quite interesting. And if anyone were particularly interested in the mating habits of the South American condor, they would no doubt be attracted to this work.
You may not know me, Robert Mitchell, but I know you, and you are the reason that I fell in love with IP. One of my first articling tasks was to read this book, this very thin, interesting looking book that described the history of IP in Canada. And after I had finished reading that book, I was so excited to start working in IP. And in fact, I searched everywhere. And I think I ended up finding a copy of it on eBay to give to my friend to make him equally as excited as I was to enter the IP career.
I actually brought the book with me today, but the book that Robert co-authored was on the history of the patent and trademark profession here in Canada, and the various articulations of that institute and the profession in trying to bring itself to where it is today.
Robert is called Bob by just about everybody. And I learned one day when he was talking about a French associate who would call him Boob, that he didn't enjoy Boob or Bob, and he really preferred the name Robert. But as he is, he never told anybody. So sometimes I tell some people, but he would never raise it, never.
The year 2000, we were in Banff, Alberta, and one of the events was a campfire that they had set ablaze for the group so that we could sit around and roast marshmallows and have a few cocktails together. Robert and I spotted that there were some elk nearby. I don't know whose idea it was. I suspect Robert's. That we should try to see if we can ride one of those elks. And I suspect, contrary to probably some sort of law that protects elk and anything you find in a national park, we decided to see if we could chase one down. Clearly, it was no effort on behalf of the elk to get away from us, but I do remember trying to get on an elk with Robert Mitchell, and this is something that I'll always remember.
Si c'était il y a plusieurs années, je dirais Monsieur Mitchell, mais maintenant, je suis rendu à l'aise de t'appeler, de vous appeler Robert. Comme tu le sais déjà, je l'ai dit à quelques reprises, je ne peux que te remercier pour tout le temps que tu m'as consacré à travers les années, pas seulement pendant ma période d'apprentissage de ce métier, mais pour toute l'aide que tu m'as donnée au niveau professionnel. Je t'en suis éternellement reconnaissant. Merci.
Robert's worked tirelessly for the betterment of the profession. He's devoted his career to, excellence in his work, and has mentored a great number of patent agents along the way, mostly in the Montreal area. I count myself as one of those agents. He's been a thought leader in the community for years, and he's just devoted himself to the work of IPIC over the years, and has enlisted the aid of others. And really, IPIC and the IP framework is they're better off for having had his involvement over those years.